This morning, the Philadelphia 76ers have fired their head coach, Doc Rivers. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting. I'll start with you here, JJ. Your reaction to this news, obviously you played there.
Well, I can't say I'm surprised. I think we've talked about this all season long, that there are consequences to a lack of results. And this is a team, and I was part of those teams. We have not been past the second round of the playoffs since 2001. Doc was brought in to change that. It's not all on Doc. I think, obviously, the coach probably bears the brunt of some of those consequences. But, look, Joel Embiid was hurt, not his best self. James Harden had some great games. But, again, closeout games, not his best self. This is not just on Doc, but I can't say I'm surprised.
Stephen A.?
Well, when we were on Countdown on Sunday and the Sixers lost the game, I said immediately that they just cost Doc Rivers his job. I didn't want that to happen, but obviously I had anticipated it. And it's really, really unfortunate. He's been employed as a head coach in the NBA pretty much last 24 years. We know his record, good and bad. We know the success that he's had. We've known there's about 9 other coaches that have won over 1,000 games. We know he's going to be a Hall of Famer. We know all of these things. But we also know that he's lost 10 Game 7s. We understand that. And he's lost the lead on several occasions, a 3-2 lead, a 3-1 lead. And when your team, led by your superstar Joel Embiid and James Harden, are virtual no-shows, literal no-shows, and not one but 2 consecutive closeout games, a Game 6 in Philadelphia that they could have closed Boston out, a Game 7 in Boston where they got annihilated, and your team flat out quits on you. And then you've got guys like James Harden going on social media and talking about it's about their relationship and what have you. When Doc Rivers lets you go to Vegas during the playoffs, for crying out loud, these are the kind of things where chickens come home to roost. Ultimately, those things are looked upon. You look at what's transpiring. You look at whether or not you got the pulse of players, et cetera, and you decided you're going to make a change. And remember, Brett Brown couldn't get them to the conference finals. Doc Rivers knew the mandate was to get out of the second round and to get them to the conference finals. And in 3 consecutive seasons, they came up short. So it's not a surprise, unfortunately.
Stephen A., and then JJ, you can piggyback. Does this move get them closer to the next level? Do you think this was the right decision here?
No, I don't think it was the right decision, because I don't think that James Harden is the right player for that franchise, to be quite honest with you. I think that he's lost a step. He's not what he used to be. He led the league in assists. He's still an all-star caliber player. Not to throw any shade on him in that regard, but in big games, he comes up very, very small on far too many occasions. And ultimately, I think that if Doc Rivers had more I don't know what word to use in this particular situation, but somebody that was ready to step up in big moments, I don't think he would have found himself in this situation. That certainly didn't happen, and that's why he's gone.
I think all the time in the NBA, about bearing responsibility and taking accountability. Yeah. And I know I had a bunch of teammates that did that. I've had coaches that do that. I certainly tried my best to do that at times. And there's a organizational failure here. It's not just on Doc Rivers. Right. The players bear some of this responsibility. Doc obviously does. His coaching staff does. I will say this, whether or not it was the right decision, I do think it was the right decision. And that's unfortunate. And I think it's the nature of coaching, though. You look at hold on. You look at who is on the market right now. Mm-hmm. Doc Rivers, Monty Williams, Coach Bud, Nick Nurse. Those are 4 of the best coaches we have in our sport. Yeah. And they all have now been let go in the last month or so. It's the nature of coaching. It is a results-based business. And I think some of this, when specifically with Doc, some of this is about the relationship with the players. Yeah. And once you've lost that, then it becomes the right decision to move on from that. And I'm not speculating at all about what James Harden's future is going to be. I'm talking about this team right now. When you've lost that, yeah, it's the right decision to move on. We see that happen all the time. Sometimes you need a new voice.
Let me say this, a couple of things. I was on the phone immediately after the Sixers lost the game, and we did countdown. I was on the phone with Kevin Hart, obviously a Philly native, big-time 76ers fan. Kevin Hart is a comedian. Kevin Hart makes a living off of making us laugh. I've known him for years. The brother was near tears. I've never heard him that furious in my life. And he was completely and utterly disgusted. And I bring that up because I think it's emblematic of what a lot of people are feeling. And JJ, you're not wrong with what you're saying. But I think this comes down to this one point. Keep your eyes on this, JJ, because this is very, very important. If Mike D'Antoni emerges as a prime candidate for this Sixers job, which should not happen in my estimation, if Mike D'Antoni, dare I say, ends up getting the Sixers job, with Mark Jackson available, Monty Williams available, Nick Nurse available, Budenholzer available, if Mike D'Antoni gets the job, James Harden went and got Doc Rivers fired. If that happens, that's what happened to Doc Rivers today. Remember I said that.
Yep. I just want to share a tweet that I see here from Woj. The Sixers search for a new coach is expected to include Mike Budenholzer, Sam Cassell, Mike D'Antoni, Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel, and Monty Williams. JJ, your reaction to those names. Do you think one might be the right fit?
Well, I will say, I played for Monty in Philadelphia. He's familiar with the city. He's familiar with the organization. He already has a relationship with the star player. I thought what he did in Phoenix in terms of turning that franchise around, the post-Nash era of just being perennial bottom dwellers in the NBA. And all of a sudden he gets there, he changes the culture, they add CP, and now they're, three straight years of being a contender. He's a name that makes a lot of sense to me. Stephen A. knows this. You need buy-in when you get to the level that Joel Embiid is at. You need buy-in from your star player about who the coach should be. That's a fact. There's a story that I heard about the Bucks trying to figure out who to hire after Jason Kidd was fired, and they said we like you, Coach Budenholzer, we like you. There's one more thing we have to do. You're gonna get on my plane right now, and you're gonna go see Giannis. You're gonna have dinner with Giannis, and that's sort of the stamp, right? So I think as much as we can talk about names, how they fit, what they've done in the past, to me, it's are you getting buy-in from your best player?
Exactly, and piggybacking off of that point, I would say no to Budenholzer because of that, because I think it got to a point where the buy-in from the players wasn't what Milwaukee wanted it to be, regardless of how successful and exceptional he was during the regular season, and how injuries and availability was a culprit to some degree in their demise. The fact of the matter is that he wasn't seen and perceived. I'm telling you what I know as a reporter. He wasn't seen and perceived as somebody that had the greatest relationship with players. And it's one of those things, not a bad relationship, JJ. It's just that the same voice sometimes is a new voice that's needed. That's all I mean by that. So I would say no to him. I think there was some fatigue on the part of Nick Nurse in Toronto. I think a year off and then him ending up somewhere else. I think that omits him or eliminates him from this Sixers position at this particular moment in time. Mark Jackson is hungry. Monty Williams probably felt he never deserved to be let go. Sam Cassell would have been a great choice because I would love to see him as a head coach, but the fact that he was in Philly under Doc Rivers, I'm not sure that really, really works for the Philly situation. So I would say Mark Jackson, Monty Williams, and I'm sure there's some other names that will come up, but it needs to be folks that can hold dudes accountable, but in the same breath have their pulse to some degree, has that buy-in that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave it with this, and to piggyback on your point, the best three regular season records over the last 3 years, the Suns, the Bucks, and the Sixers, and all three have fired their head coaches. We will have plenty more on this after the break. Again, Doc Rivers out in Philadelphia.